So I think we'll get started. So first of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming out. You've taken an interest in what's going on up here at the, I'll say the old Sylvan Pool, or we're gonna call it probably Idlewild Park moving forward. So, you know, we did, the town acquired that property a few years back, and the intention was to leave that open as a pool. But looking into it further and, you know, seeing some of our constraints and some of the constraints that the state DEP and EPA, whoever, puts on municipalities as running a pool, that was not feasible for the borough. So the next step is we hired a landscape architect, and we're here tonight to get your ideas, so that the architect, John Thomas Morgan, can put it all together. So hopefully we'll get some 3 renderings is what we asked, is what we put in the contract, and hopefully the council will, and the Buildings and Grounds Committee will be able to make a decision on that with your input, and I'm sure they'll take all that into consideration. So I encourage everybody here tonight to ask questions, give your ideas, and hopefully what comes out on paper here in the next couple of months is really gonna be beneficial to really that area. You know, that area has so much history, and I think it's important to include the people in that neighborhood who it's really gonna directly affect, include the people, past members of the pool who have had generations go to that pool and really have family lifetime memories that came out of going up there. So I thought it was very important to have everybody give their input and see what gets put on paper. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our architect, John Thomas Morgan, and
It's John Morgan Thomas.
John Morgan. I knew I messed that up. I was hoping you weren't gonna correct me, but I knew I
that's
messed
okay.
that up.
I labor under 3 names that can be first names or last names, so.
The end product is what matters, so. Without further ado, the floor is
Well,
yours, sir.
thank you, and thank you all for coming. When I was commissioned or when we first started to look at the project, I was kind of fascinated because I grew up in central Pennsylvania, and we actually had 2 neighbors with spring-fed concrete pools with sand, well, they were kind of mud bottoms, actually. And I understand that this was, you know, over a long period of time was sort of a very well-loved facility. And so I thought it was very interesting. So as the mayor said, we're here to, you know, collect information this evening and kind of get input from the community, which is why I didn't show up with several plans. But what I did bring is, and you can come up, and I may point to these a little bit later, but you can really come up at any time. I have a plan and a survey of the facility over there on the far table, and photographs, and you may all know what it looks like anyway, but they're kind of in the middle. And then this sheet, we just basically put together some images of things that it could be, not things that it has to be, in any, and some of them represent potential uses, because this is sort of an open, totally open discussion. Some of them are uses, and some of them are images of the kinds of, you know, plant material or how it might appear. So there's kind of a mixed bag here that we can discuss a little bit more. And then at the, you know, at the end, I'll get up and just be able to walk around, and we do this sometimes, and I didn't know how many people were going to be here this evening, but if I could just ask you before you leave, if you kind of look at some of these pictures, and I've brought some post-it notes, and if you could just stick the red ones on the pictures that are kind of images that you like. And then I think I have some additional ones, because I was thinking about this, if there's some blue ones, if there's something that you definitely don't want to see, we need to know that too. So, you know, that's kind of been our process. We were scheduled this afternoon with, I have a consulting engineer who was going to take a look at we were going to look at the site this afternoon, as well as a demolition contractor, because I wanted to bring in kind of their experience here. But obviously with snow on the ground, that didn't happen, so we still need to do that. So that's kind of where we are in the process. And again, my name is John Thomas. The firm is John Morgan Thomas Landscape Architects. We're on the West Coast. We're in Lambertville, and I have a small firm. We do about 50% of our work is private residential work, and 50% is public park, open space. We do a fair amount of historic preservation work, and this is kind of exactly the kind of scale that we like to work at. You know, I think from what I've seen of the existing conditions on the site, you know, we have a pool that, as the mayor said, is no longer viable as a pool for probably a variety of reasons. And so then the question is, what would you be interested in seeing happen on the site? You know, one way to do this is there's kind of a long way around, which is, you know, you do a survey, you evaluate every single recreational facility in the community. I think that's kind of the indirect and probably not the best way to get to where we need to be. This is, you know, it seems to me that this relates to the, particularly to the neighborhood that it's in. It's not a big site. So I think it has a lot to do with what serves the neighborhood, and also, you know, it certainly can serve the community. There, I think, a level of options in terms of we'll call it the development of the site. That's probably a bad word, but that can range from, you know, certainly the pool as it exists right now, the structure kind of needs to go away. And so, you know, technically that's possible, and there are some kind of options for how that's done. But once the pool is there and there's not a giant hole in the ground, you know, what happens after that? And we certainly have a kind of an interesting resource in that, you know, we know it's spring fed. We know, say, the plumbing is intact and can be utilized. So I think there's an opportunity for some type of water feature there, and that's a great opportunity. And we kind of know, and somebody mentioned when they came in, somebody mentioned that, yeah, there maybe was a stream, and there certainly was a wetland, probably back before the area was developed. And so those are, and that's to me is kind of a unique opportunity for improvements to the site, park improvements. And, you know, the level of use is really something that I think is subject totally to community input and what people in the neighborhood thinks are appropriate. I think there are no pictures of pickleball courts or things like that in here, and I imagine that was, you know, not be a desirable use. So I guess I'd like to just, you know, and I can point to these pictures, and we have a survey, and we kind of basically know what the elevations are that we have to deal with on the site. But as you can see, I was there in the fall. There's still a few leaves on the trees, you know, again, I'm sure you're familiar with the existing conditions. We have a pretty significant grade change from the street down to the pool level. It's at least 10, 12 feet. And part of developing a park plan we'll have to do at some level with, if we have something more developed on the site, then we need to and should provide some accessibility to the site, which I think is entirely possible. I mean, there are steps to go down there, but I think that there's plenty of room if we wanted to create a totally ADA accessible pathway, if we are in fact creating pathways in the park. So, you know, the pathways are, and so that's a, I would say it's a constraint, but it's probably a need or requirement if the park is to be developed in any way. beyond that, the kind of the opportunity to create, you know, to do something with water and the need to create some accessibility, and that's a state or federal standard, then I think it's really sort of wide open in terms of how the park is, what shape it takes place moving forward. And again, we've been tasked, as the mayor said, we've been tasked to provide 3 alternatives for review. And of course, cost always comes into this, so at some level in these 3 alternatives, we'll probably have something that addresses the overall cost. But they may just take a look at 3 different ways to look at kind of essentially the finished product. So with all that, I'm here to listen to you, and I have my I usually come and I can just sort of write things down as we go along, but my question is usually 2 things, and it's like, what would you like to see in the park, in the park plan, and what would you really not, what do you think is not appropriate for this property?
If I could just add 2 things.
Sure.
And I'm not stepping on your toes here, Eddie, but the committee also took into consideration, there is electric on the site, and there are bathroom facilities, plumbing, that sort of thing, also on the site, so he knows about those as well. So.
Is there a timeline associated with it?
Yes, sir.
Have you gotten any assessment as of what the consensus is on what the use of the park would be? I think many of us would agree we don't want pickleball courts and we don't want overhead lights or night lights or anything like that, that it's a park that should be first and foremost safe for children. In its current configuration, it is not.
Absolutely.
So the walls would have to come down. And then beyond that, with a well-contoured and appropriate landscaping, children should be able to go there, should be able to have, and adults, and especially older adults, and have a passive event, either play or contemplative reading or just sitting by nature. Consider it's on Sylvan Drive. It's wooded. That was the original intent of the property, and with the wetlands across the street to the north of it that feed that property, it's sort of like one contiguous piece. The water for the pool comes from across the street. I guess you're aware of that.
Yes.
Yeah. So right now there's very limited parking. I don't think, my own personal opinion is we don't need any additional parking. That people should be able to walk there with their strollers, with their children, with their pets, whatever. I'm just throwing out ideas. I'm not trying to.
That's perfect.
In the wetlands, there's parking there.
Yeah.
So you have the parking in front of the park now, and then you also have parking next to the Colb's house. So that whole lot is also parked.
We're very fortunate in town here to have several parks that neighborhoods can walk to the parks, and you don't have to drive there. The ones that are further away, of course, we have to drive to, but mostly, I think people walk to the parks, except the major one. So this one here, I envision not to accommodate a lot of cars, okay, but to have what we have now. And I expect it's going to find a lot of neighborhood use because no one's going to go swimming there. Okay, we have a suitable pool already for the town. You get my drift.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It's something that would fit the character of the neighborhood, which was developed in the late 1930s. The area below the pool was completed development in 1979 and was a wetland, in fact, before the track went in. So having something that is, in fact, we kind of missed the spring peepers ever since the development. It'd be nice to have some small wet area there and invite the frogs back. Okay. Okay. I'm just trying to throw out some ideas and,
Don't ask me to draw frogs.
no, just throw it.
I think the beauty of the pool was always that it was kind of recognized as a park. I mean, it was always seen as kind of this private, like sanctuary lagoon-like thing. It was just that it had a pool there, and people did utilize it for that, for barbecuing, for picnics. Their kids obviously to come and be there. A lot of local families come and bring their children because they had the sandy front. You know, those are all very attractive to the younger families that moved in. Keeping that same aesthetic would obviously be optimal. I don't know about if it's gonna be still stay gated, because there is concern about making sure that it's not utilized in the wee hours by what historically have been teenagers coming in and doing teenage things. And then, like I said, Jason, is there a timeline
Yes,
associated?
I don't think that there'll be a fence around it. You know, it's a park, right, so we can't.
Right,
like,
I don't-
club-
it
It's not
wouldn't
gonna be a private club or anything, so as far as being fenced in, probably not.
There's one point about the safety,
Yeah, but not
we
being.
don't need it.
Yeah, the parking on the opposite side of the street is probably gonna remain. It will probably be a multi-year project, maybe 1 year's cleaning up and just make it aesthetically look well, depending on what he comes up with and the cost. We have no idea what that
Right.
is yet, but it's more than likely gonna be a multi-year, project for the borough.
Is there budget set aside for this?
We have no idea what it's gonna even, we have nothing,
No,
no
income.
idea.
In terms of fencing then, all of the existing fencing will be coming down.
I would think so, for after, you know, when the park is complete, I would think that, but again,
Oh, it
we
needs
haven't
to,
seen
right?
any
Because
rendering.
the rear,
It's trashed.
the rear of the pool comes into my yard. And so there are currently 2 fences there.
Right.
One that I had installed on the pool's property, per the people who told me to do that, because they did not want the one fence there and the other fence 10 feet away, because everything would end up in that area. So they wanted me to put my fence as close as possible to the current fence. And I don't care if my fence comes down, that doesn't matter, but I just wanted to know if it was going to, what your plans were in terms of keeping.
I mean, I've been to the site and I saw that there were kind of several, yeah, several layers of fencing, let's call it, and some appear to be of the adjacent residences or not, and then I think on the one side, the fence is not on the property line, so, I mean, if you ask me now if it needed to be fenced, I would say no, and because it's not a pool anymore, won't be a hazard, and it would be like any other public park. I assume your parks are dawn to dusk for the most part, and, you know, they would be policed accordingly, and it wouldn't be any different than any other park or open space.
So the overall thought is to have it, from what I'm hearing, a quiet park.
That's what I,
Okay.
that was,
So-
honestly, that was my assumption, but we're here to listen.
Okay, because a quiet park doesn't include a playground, I assume. And we have to, you know, one of the thoughts is, are we going to have that as a playground as well? When you have the Whatnong Fire Truck Park down the road. And I'm open either way, but I think that's one of the things that we need to address.
Again, we're here to listen. I think an image that we have on here is a very kind of low key. If children go there and there's a mulch area and there's some logs and sort of kind of, as opposed to, I'll call it hard play equipment that I assume exists other places in the,
When we
in town.
met as a committee with them, you know, earlier on after we signed the contract with them, that was one of the main points that the committee did come up with, as well, just the quiet. We have no quiet spot of a park, right? And most of them have either playground equipment or sports, some sort of sports on them or something. We really have nothing, a nature kind of quiet park. So that was talked about a lot. It looked like the committee was kind of leaning that way, but again, we're here to listen to everybody.
Obviously, without a fence there, would there be any plans to maybe just do a tree buffer around the perimeter? Cause not to say that a fence is needed, but it does give some kind of blockage to some of the people that are right there.
I think, again, I think if I was looking at this, you know, right now, that we would propose whether, you know, maybe it's not a hedge is in a wall, but it's planting that's more dense at the ground level than the canopy trees that are already there. I think that would just enhance, in addition to providing a little privacy to neighbors, it would kind of enhance the park itself as an open space to be in, so.
Again, his house is directly behind the pool, and it's down a
Down,
little.
down.
I even like the idea of it being more of a wellness or even like, you know, peaceful, quiet, meditative kind of environment, because we do have so many parks in town that are centered towards the children. Being the proximity this is to so many houses, you know, having that kind of ethereal place to go just for peacefulness is, I think, more optimal considering all the places that we have to choose from today.
I agree, for one.
Thank you. Of course, I back up to it, sorry.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about your ideas of incorporating water into the park. That's something that you mentioned when you spoke a couple minutes ago. Just wanted to hear how maybe you've addressed this sort of situation in the past.
Well, my understanding of, I'll call it the plumbing, is that one, it's a high, you know, it obviously was a wooded wetland at some point, was its original condition, and that there is a high water table that, absent the bottom of the pool, would probably be higher than you see it right now, and that it is drained. And then we also have a pipe that goes from the other side of the road and the spring on the other side of the road. So we have a controlled water source if we would like to utilize it, which is kind of fun and something you don't often see on, you know, it's not a public water source. So I think there are a variety of ways we could treat that in terms of the aesthetics. You know, one sort of precedent that I could think of is that, you know, in historic parks, and I'm a little familiar with, like Fairmont Park in Philadelphia, they had carriage roads, and along the carriage roads, they had these wonderful kind of springs, and they were clearly man-made. They were a pipe that went into a trough, and then it was, you know, they were used. So that's kind of one image, and the other images that we have, and sort of the contemporary version of that, and again, I'll come up after, the contemporary version of that is, you know, we have a water source, we could have a wall, we could have a spout in the wall. And then the other image is could we have something that looked more like a natural spring? And whether that, the kind of underlying soils and stuff would support it, it could be, we might be able to make it completely natural, or it may require a liner or something. We know we have the ability to kind of control it, and I think that, I won't say the limitation is that my thought would be to keep it shallow so that it was, you know, we have some code limitations here when fences become required, but I think it's usually less than 18 inches. So it could be shallow, it could be wonderful to work at, and they're wonderful to look at, and you know, it could be both a kind of a quiet, contemplative place, but you know, if there are kids in the neighborhood, you're certainly not going to keep them out of, nor I think you should.
When, a lot of times, and I'm sure you're the expert, but when you re-divert water, and I don't think that's the plan, there's unintended consequences if you live downhill, which we do right behind. And we've seen this happen, you know, all of a sudden this area that never used to get flooded, all of a sudden gets flooded, and something happened upstream, and I just wanna make sure, I know nothing about this kind of stuff, but you're the expert, and you're mindful.
Yes, we would not want to see that happen.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair statement, and I said, we do have a,
Nobody does, but it does.
We do have a,
Nobody intends that, but it happens.
It certainly
Yeah.
happens. We have a civil
Yeah.
engineer involved, so
Yeah.
we're gonna ask him to weigh in on this. And I, at this point, I don't fully understand where all the pipes go. We know there's kind of drainage bypass and inlets on the curb, and I don't know enough at this point to kind of make a judgment on that, but we'll certainly be aware of that.
But
I mean-
the intent would be to keep the park open 365 days a year, so water would be flowing. It may freeze a certain time of year, and that should have no adverse consequences. I
And-
think we'd expect that.
Yeah.
That there'd be water movement, not to encourage mosquitoes and other insects.
Yep.
But a water feature enhances the value of properties throughout the area.
And
And
you
there's
know,
also something to look at.
and it's a benefit to wildlife if there's running water, and even if there's a small.
We've
small
got plenty of
pond.
wildlife.
But we have to, are there many deer in the neighborhood? Okay, that's fine.
Just a few.
They're free.
I watch them at my pond all winter. Anyway, so yeah, that's, you know, we have to deal with that.
I think that if we're gonna use it year-round, what I envision is hot summer days. So you need some form of shade in the park
Right.
to encourage more visitation during the summer, and basically having shaded areas where you could sit down and still enjoy the outdoors without being exposed to the elements.
It's good, yeah, good mix of sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, people like to come there because it was quiet, but that was one of the biggest issues, was there's no shade.
And there's no longer a large cooling body of water in the center of the
Correct.
So there's a lot of space there.
And there's a lot of trees that are now gone, so there's even more direct sun.
There's some folks that are watching online, and they're wondering where or how they can submit their suggestions.
They can email me.
Email you, Jason? Okay,
Okay.
perfect, thank you. I'm sorry, Mayor.
No, that's fine. I guess one of the things that, a couple of the images that we show here involve, you know, some sort of pathway system. So how do you get around, you know, and, I don't think we're thinking necessarily paved surfaces. They could be, they could be gravel surfaces. While I think it's not everything in the park necessarily has to be ADA accessible. But I think it would still probably be desirable to have ADA accessibility from the street level kind of down into the park. That's not to say that, you know, if you were to do a loop trail, that every single thing has to be accessible, because there's expense involved and so forth. So that's something we always have to keep in mind. And
So, I mean, I really didn't hear anything about paths. What do people feel about a natural type path like he's speaking about? Jim?
One of the things about the bathrooms and a pathway, you would definitely need a pathway to the bathrooms. And then the bathrooms would have to be changed out, because I believe they're single stalls. And for ADA, you have to have wheelchairs be able to get through there, so you're gonna have to make them larger. Like all our parks in town, I think it's October 30th, we shut them down anyway because of the freezing. There's no heat over there. So it's just things to keep in mind. On the ADA, when we looked at the pool originally, there's no sidewalk around it, so that was out. By changing ownership, it becomes a town's issue. So you could do probably the gravel stone dust, but you would definitely need to the bathrooms.
if the bathrooms are retained, and I guess that's kind of an important question, then we've
So it's gonna add a lot of cost to that, changing those out.
if the bathrooms were to stay, then they would have to be made ADA accessible, and once you've got that ADA accessible facility, then you have to have access to it.
Right.
If you pull that away, then not so much. But we look at it, as what's required as what might serve the community best. So we've been involved in some projects where technically there wasn't a requirement for ADA because we weren't servicing an ADA facility, but, you know, hey, we're across from the senior housing, and there's kind of a need for it, whether there's a requirement or not. So that's kind of the way we look at most of these, but the bathroom is a really good issue, and the need for the bathroom is something that should be.
You think we should take a vote on whether we wanna have bathrooms on the site? Because if it's gonna serve the local population, okay, we're talking about cost, right? And bathrooms, I know, are very expensive to construct and maintain, okay? Do you really need a bathroom on the site where you could cut the cost down and basically restrict other people from using the facilities who don't belong in the area?
So just the thought of that, again, it's a park, you can't restrict people from coming there no matter what it is.
Oh, no, I understand that.
I know, but I'm just saying, so some of the other parks have porta-johns in it, right? So we get complaints from the neighbors, oh, who wants to look at a green porta-john here?
Right.
Here we have a facility, it's plumbed, it's piped, it's electric, whatever we have. I understand your concern, but it's something, I don't know, get the automatic locks where it's only open during the day, certain times of the year, whatever. I mean, there's other options to it, but, you know, I've heard the concerns about seeing porta-johns, you know, you have one sitting over here at Simon's Park right on Mountain Way, and people get tired of looking at that and driving by, so that's,
I'm glad
that's
it's there.
one reason. You must be a walker.
I am.
There you go. Well, now you can stay in that neighborhood. How's that? We'll put a welcome mat out there for you.
What about maintenance on that, like, so, even when it was a pool, you know, it got clogged all the time, and, you know, like, we were on site to take care of it, but obviously
Just
there's
like
not
it
gonna
would
be.
just be like the snack stand over at Community Center or one of the other facilities that we have, you know, the road guy, somebody would let somebody know, and then we either get a professional or if our road department can take care of it, they will take care of it.
I mean, I think that's something we have to, I mean, in my world, especially with plants, I mean, we're always asking maintenance questions because I've been doing this long enough to know that we don't think about it. It usually doesn't end up the way we hoped. So, I mean, we would kind of by nature in terms of thinking about the maintenance on this, including the overall landscape, that's something that will be discussed in these alternatives, because there will be some that are probably higher maintenance and some that are lower maintenance. Some of the images that are on here, you'll see, you know, maybe smaller areas of lawn or things that need to be mowed, areas, you know, of meadow, which still require maintenance and maybe a little bit more skillful maintenance than lawn mowing, but nonetheless, over time, less maintenance. So we've been kind of gravitating to, in our practice, kind of some of those solutions. You know, this site, it is kind of open and sunny in the center where the pool was, but there is still a lot of shade. So, you know, there's even an opportunity long-term where if you said, we don't want to see any lawn there because we don't have to send a mowing crew up there, that's something that tends to cost more up front for the initial planting and so forth, but, you know, over the long run, again, not having to send a mowing crew weekly to maintain the lawn. But that's not to say there couldn't be a small area. That's kind of the, so there are a lot of different ways that this can appear. And again, we just think that the maintenance part of this is really important. You know, we use for smaller paths, we use the stone dust or gravel paths all the time. And, you know, that requires some maintenance, but typically a better solution than, you know, wood chip paths that need new wood chips every year. So there's, again, those are some of the things that I've been thinking about as we start to think about this project.
Now, the maintenance of some of the existing kind of wooded areas, would that be taken into consideration into this plan, or would that have to be handled outside of the plan?
No, I think we'll be looking at the existing trees, and we actually added some of that information to to the survey that we received. And I honestly, so we picked up the trees that were remaining on the left side of the site when viewed from the street, and I honestly didn't know until we got the information that the right hand, there's a, I don't know, it's a 50-foot wide area on the right-hand side that's outside the fence that's still on this
Yes,
property.
this one.
So, you know, I wouldn't see any need to do anything in that area other than perhaps augment the planting. If there's non-native invasive plants there, they could be removed, things like honeysuckle and multiple of those. And, you know, if it would serve the neighborhood to, you know, plant some flowering trees or large shrubs to kind of enclose the space and buffer neighbors, I think that's a good way to treat it. There's no need in this kind of, which is always fun, there's no need, we're not trying to make more room so we can, you know, we need the last 50 feet to build the pickleball court. That's not what's happening here. It's really kind of a soft, natural space. At least that's the way we've been thinking about it. It's kind of what I'm hearing tonight.
It won't be coming out of your shade tree budget.
That was my question, I
It's a
wanted to ask
shade
that
tree,
one.
so he's-
So I'm asking.
I mean, we do a lot of planting with, you know, that we think is really economical with 7 to 10 gallon container stock. We really get a lot of value from that. And I do some municipal consulting work, and now that everyone has the tree replacement ordinance, the state tree replacement ordinance, we're trying to figure out what to do with how to get those out into town properties.
I understand we don't have a formal budget at this point, but it feels prudent to have some sort of like ballpark, just like before a room full of people get all excited, or for us to keep in mind as we weigh this project versus others. In your experience, like developing a park this size, what kind of costs have you seen?
You know, I don't want to answer the question this way, but sometimes it's true. It's, you know, you can, depending on how the park is detailed, you know, you can spend anything on anything. It's not that we know it's not, we know we're not developing a little vest pocket park in Brooklyn where you can spend $5 million and not even, and be surprised. I mean, we've only, and I don't want to assign a number to this just yet, because I'm waiting to review the site with my demolition contractor and engineer. I mean, making the pool go away is not an insignificant expense here. So,
So just, with the pool, redoing the pool and trying to get that up and running, it was about $3 million. It would have been plus that, right? So we figured on 3 million, so it'll be under 3 million.
Better.
but the pool and the amount of demolition work kind of depends on finished product. I mean, we've done a lot of, it's amazing how many people buy residential properties that have pools on them, don't want pools. And you have to make them go away, and they're really a hard thing to, you know, and even a residential pool is 50 or 60, it costs as much as the pools probably cost when they were built. And this one, and I've been involved in a couple that look like this one, and the walls are 2 feet thick, and they were, you know, built in the, what was the original construction, the 30s on this? The dam and so forth?
I think that's the number that's.
75 years old now.
Yeah, so there's a lot of concrete and.
That concrete though is so,
Brittle.
it just falls apart, you know, it's been patched and glued and taped and.
I know what the surface looks like, however.
It's not that solid.
Technically concrete gets harder with age. And I know it falls off the surface, but every time we've been involved, it was, oh, that's gonna come right out. But usually what happens is they take a certain amount off the top of the pool. They break up the bottom of the pool so it doesn't hold water, and we can use, because just disposing of this material is
Well, the
Is
pool
significant.
pool does not have a concrete base.
Yeah, usually
fluid.
that's what happens, in a kind of a prescribed manner, but that's not a bad way to do it. So, and that's typically what we see. However, if, obviously the grade that's out there where the pool is set was not the natural grade, they built it to him, they built it up, and, and if one alternative would be, oh, let's return it to the way it was, which means everything would have to come out. And I'm not advocating that, I'm just, that is another solution, not the one that I would, again, be advocating.
So I do not live in the neighborhood where Idlewild is. I wanted to come tonight and listen and hear what the plan is. And I understand that, of course, you want it to be safe, you want it to be pretty, you want to be able to use it. But also, I do feel that we have excellent parks. Robert's Garden is a beautiful place to sit and look at things. I just don't want us to go crazy with what gets done to this. All of the ideas are wonderful. But you have just lost your pool, and we have a town pool that needs repair and improvement. And I would rather see the money for make sure we have a nice park, but also save the pool that we do have for the rest of the community. Because it's so highly used. There's over 1,200 members, there's 100 teams, swim team, there's 300 kids that go to the summer camp that all use that pool over and over and over all summer long. So as much as I want to support people who, and I get you live near it and you want it to be nice, I just want us to keep in mind the budget and how much the rest of the community, Wanton's not that far away. Robert's Garden, I'm a person who walks constantly and uses all the parks. I know which ones have bathrooms. Anyhow, that's my
So
2 cents.
we've just applied for 2 grants for repairs on the pool.
Yeah, but they're not very big.
It's something, right? So we're definitely gonna invest, as long as I'm here, the pool is very important to the community. And like you said, you have athletes that come out of there, you have socializing that comes through there. As long as the council is willing to put forth funds to repair that pool and keep it operating, that's what I fully intend to do, so.
I feel better.
Along with this project, because we can't keep that eyesore, that unsafe eyesore up there.
No, I understand that something
So
needs
we
to be
have to
done.
do
I'm just
something.
saying, let's keep it within reason,
Yeah.
because frankly, I don't see the council making big steps towards saving the pool. I hear that they're supportive, but I don't see it. I haven't seen a meeting like this where we're being shown what's gonna happen to the pool.
Well, I'll put you at a little bit of ease, right? Mike Ivy's here, he's on the council, he did meet with some representatives in the town, and they're coming up with some ideas to fix the pool. So,
Thank you.
they're making an effort, we all are, so, I think they understand how important it is to the entire community as well.
I had a question, and again, kind of in regard to the, costs involved and maintenance is always a thing. Is there a group in town, a nature club, a garden club, or any volunteer group who could be brought into this? Because that would certainly make a difference in, again, you don't wanna build anything that is not gonna be maintained, and everything needs to have some level of maintenance, as much as I would like to.
I think that was brought up at one of the earlier meetings, I think, Jerry, or if you remember, I think it was brought up, we have a group or 2 that would probably be interested in plantings, that kind of stuff.
Because to me, this park is kind of tailor-made to me, especially if it's a nature club and so forth.
In those earlier meetings, it was actually brought up to make it more of a community garden area or a neighborhood garden area, because you have the running water, would have plots and take care of it themselves, but the town would make the pathways, the beds, and everything else like that. But again, you gotta fill it in and get it ready. There's still gonna be a lot of cost to add to that, we all know that, just to make it safe. If you just fill it in, throw dirt on it and grass seed, it's still gonna cost money.
Sure.
So,
Is there a vote that's gonna be on the,
No, I don't think it'll be a vote, I think it's gonna come to the committee, once the three ideas. We'll share it with the people here that were here, and, out of three of them, maybe we can consider that, but I don't know whether that will happen. We always get this one once and this one, and then it's a tie, then what do you
too
do?
many?
So we'll see what he comes up with. The ideas are here that he's gonna try to incorporate, and, I think the council will have to make a decision on the cost of whatever the renderings are, and, see what we can fit in the budget, whether it's all this year or next year, or whatever the case may be, right, so.
well, it's definitely gonna be stages.
In
It has
my
to be.
opinion, it's gonna have to be stages.
You know,
It has to be.
for safety reasons, we have to fill it in, take those walls down. If we do just throw dirt and grass on it for now and then develop it after there, that's gonna have to take place, it's not gonna go overnight.
I'm just glad you're doing something, I appreciate that.
I'm glad I'm doing something. I don't even like driving up there, and you people
No.
live up there, so.
Yes.
And it was never the intention for it to take this long either, we had no idea at the time, so. I still get mad.
Voodoo doll of many men.
So that's kind of all I had. So I've got, as I said, the plans up here. I've got some Post-its. So again, not a formal survey, but if there's anything anybody really likes on the photographs, it kind of helps us. If there's like an image or a use that you prefer, feel free to put a sticky on it. And also feel free, we have existing things, if you just want to make some notes on it, that's fine also. And especially if there's anything that I know I didn't get everything because I'm not the greatest note taker while I'm talking. If there's anything I missed, please just add it to the board, because that's what we're here for.
I saw that there's something regarding social gatherings now, would that extend to picnic tables, barbecues, where people can come and gather? I'm just throwing that out is that a thought that has been tossed around?
Well, I mean, let's say if there was just a central lawn space, if it was an open lawn space with planting around the perimeter, could it be used for some type of informal gathering? Sure. Do we want to, do you want to encourage things like barbecues?
Yeah, we're not gonna be advertising with this.
Yeah, I think.
We have other parks that have.
I understand.
But if somebody brings one, you're not gonna kick them out of there, so you can't. But I don't think the intent is to provide that sort of.
And it will be a no
Invitation.
alcohol park, I
Just
assume?
like every other park, yeah.
And you would have to get a permit if you wanted to have a party there, like on community?
Just like every other park. Couldn't be or wouldn't be any different than any other park, as far as the rules go.
And the gazebo, actually a gazebo would be a nice thing to add to it.
Put it on the list or make a note. Some people like the gazebos, others don't like the gazebos, but.
Oh, we're talking about shade, it'd be
Yeah.
nice to be able to go in there and, to read, and when you have children, go in and be able to change them too.
They have those pergolas, I don't know if people, now that you have his name, you could probably look him up online and see some of the work that he's done. And, the pergolas with the plants that, vine or ivy, whatever, maybe that's an option for shade, something, chairs under their tables, whatever.
Yeah, I think we're going to take a vote regarding that.
I don't know what we're gonna do.
I thought we were going to do a vote here, but we're going to do.
I mean, just show of hands, I think that's, bathrooms, no bathrooms, it's, you know, we'll address it in the plans, because
As an option.
it's an option, because, and along with a discussion of what that means in terms of, quite frankly, expense and
Right.
other
It's too early to
facilities.
vote on anything right now.
Yeah.
We haven't
Okay,
even
that's
said
what-
anything, but there's a lot of trees up there, you know what goes on behind the trees, right? So,
Exactly.
Yeah, I do.
just throwing it out there, so.
No, but it's
Would
important
there
to
be
have
some-
water, because you know what it's like having to plug water around to water the plants. So since we have the water, we definitely should be keeping that there.
I mean, that's also a great resource that's in place, just the ability to easily maintain the water, or if there was a community group, for example, who wanted to, you know, maintain planting there, add to the planting, you know, kind of above and beyond the tree planting, to have that available is like a really big deal. Because it's expensive to bring in water service, and if you don't have it, it's just a nuisance.
In the back.
I assume the 2 or 3 plans that you're gonna come up with would also be presented to a group like this before it goes to the council?
I think it'll come before the committee, and again, we can pass it out to the people that were here, renderings out to people. Again, once you start getting that circle bigger, it sometimes turns into an issue. Maybe we'll show the renderings, and then the committee and the council can decide, but
Budget
we'll
might
see
be
how
the
that all
decision
goes.
maker.
Take it?
So budget might be the decision maker on what rendering you
Budget's
go
a big
with.
decision maker, so we'll see how it goes. Okay. Any other questions? He's here, he wants to hear ideas, thoughts.
Will there be another forum like this in the future?
We'll see what he comes up with. I don't have that far yet, I don't know.
Okay.
If he comes up with something that's $5 million or something, there
No.
won't be another one.
And this is just for the pool side of the street, not the other side of the facility.
Yeah, I don't intend to touch that other side of the street whatsoever. We can just use that as, it's a parking area now, we can just use that and leave it natural the way that it is. And there are some spots, obviously, almost everybody would know that there are some spots up front there that people who would need them, whether it's a carriage or a wheelchair or what have you. So, you know, I think that would be more than adequate for that space.
And the only thing that may come into play is if, again, not knowing exactly what the plumbing looks like. You know, there's some interconnections there, and it may be a stormwater issue, and it may be an issue to, you know, for
And that is gonna be
control
where-
of the spring water, so.
That is, we're gonna be where a lot of, besides the demolition, a lot of the cost is gonna be piping this spring somehow, right? Getting the old stuff out of there, cause that doesn't comply with anything that we're able to do. So we have to certainly make that adjustment, but that's gonna be an expense there too.
Thank you.
Yeah,
This-
thanks for your time.
Is there any consideration to once the water leaves the pool property, and goes down behind
There's
Norman's
no
house
option,
and the
we're
other
just
neighbors,
leaving
it does
things
get piped
where they are.
at some point
What,
past
the
that.
outflow?
Yeah.
So if they're gonna have to look at that, I mean, the outflow is there, it's been there, now it won't have any chemicals in it, right, that's going down through there, so
No, but if there's a
again, I don't know
large
how they're gonna do that.
out, and if there's a lot of water going out, there may be debris once it gets down to that pipe.
That's all gonna change probably, that would all, if that was to stay, that would have to change, I'm
You
sure.
pipe all that down to the
Yeah.
existing pipe, just,
But that wouldn't be exposed like it is now where it would be clogged.
it's just open now.
Yeah, that would all be, where that drain is, it would be all filled in anyway, so that would have to be, it would be piped from,
Well, that's not full
Either the
town
w-
property, that's people's property now.
where's that?
Behind
Norman's.
Yeah, behind it.
But that's my property. It's not the- it's not
empty.
the-
when all the runoff would happen and it would be overflowed.
But the pipe from the pool,
that it got through
the end of the pipe is on your
It's on
property.
my
Yeah,
property.
and there's
Well,
a
that's-
stream there's a stream.
And then it goes into that stream that runs.
If
And
it's
that's
seen,
my
if
property.
it
It's a
once it
natural
gets
property.
past that, it gets
Yeah,
piped.
no, understood.
Not the clock. Ask questions.
It's all the pipes on the hill to come into my property from the pool. I don't know if you walked the other direction, on the other side.
I wasn't down over the hill. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
so,
Yeah, you'll see all the mechanics back there as well.
We gave him some of the schematics of that and the easements and whatnot, the sanitary, not the storm sewer that goes through there and everything else. So he has some of it, but I don't think he's physically schematic.
It's just a quick question. So your next step is to take these ideas that you're gonna get, that you're bringing home from here, and then any that are emailed into the mayor.
Yeah,
And
myself or the clerk, you know, just
Yep.
get it to the office.
And then you're going to come up with a couple of renderings with these ideas?
Exactly, and that's kind of what was specifically called for,
Okay.
was 3 alternatives.
3 alternatives, okay, and then you present them to the council?
I assume I would present them first to the governing body, but that's up to the,
There's a committee also that's been formed for this.
On this, okay, so the committee would see them, okay, all right. And then the committee, I guess, would
They can
approach,
make a recommendation
to the council. okay.
How close are our ideas to how the committee views this?
Well, I can tell you that it was pretty much unanimous on the quiet part, and just because it's surrounded by housing and the neighbors and all. We wanted some aspect of the Idlewild pool, that's why I think the water feature to me was very important. I think it sounds like it's pretty important to everybody there. But something that was just quiet, it didn't attract a lot of traffic, I'll say, didn't require parking, that sort of thing. So I think all the ideas that we've all come up with is pretty much what the committee has foreseen this becoming. So I think everybody's pretty
What
much
is
on
the
the same
actual
page.
size of the plot that we're talking about? Is it an acre or 2 acres?
acre,
Yeah, it's just under 2 acres.
the actual plot where the pool is 0.843 acres, so it's 8.843.
So it's under 1
So it's
acre.
under an acre, so
But
it's
with
not.
the other side, it's.
So
The other side is another
Yeah.
1.1 acres, so.
Well, the other side is the source of the water for them. so-
Right, and honestly, having the existing gravel parking areas on both sides I think is a real bonus, and because it's probably sufficient to serve that occasional traffic, but not too much, and there may even be an opportunity to, tighten that up a little bit, because I just don't see the need for the parking, and if we reduce, that gravel parking is still considered an impervious surface, so if we take some away, we'll be able to credit it to whatever improvements we have in the park, so that's something that will help us out a little bit from a permitting side.
One thing you didn't put up there, you put it in red, is cost. One of the concerns, by a few of us.
Yes.
So I'm on the council, but also a member of the green team, and I know that, I don't see anybody else here from the green team. Mike's an adjunct member as well, but they would be interested in more sustainability features of this, so we don't have to use a lot of chemicals to upkeep it, and something that would help preserve, the native species and native, things that are native to Morris Plains that we could perpetuate in that spot. And it was a wetland, so maybe part of it could return to that natural, habitat that it was, and, things like that.
I mean, we would do that as a matter of course, but I'm glad you brought
Yeah.
brought it up.
And like, it wasn't mentioned, so just something like that would help with, the butterflies and the birds and things like that as part of this.
Nancy, I was thinking of that same thing, although I can't help it, I'm a teacher, I'm a principal. I just feel it's too bad that the school has such young children who can't do that, because that would be such a wonderful learning experience for them. Whether it's about the water, or it's about the native plants, or the butterflies. If there's any way that, the school can incorporate that in some way, I think it would be
Yeah,
a win-win.
it'd be a teaching spot, and also the beautification committee has done a couple of parks like that, right, Jason, where they've done,
Yeah, we've done, what do they call them, the wildflowers, one
Pollinator garden.
Yes,
Pollinator,
thank you.
that's it, thank you. There's supposed to be another one out on 202 down by, Coles, and we can do that other open spot, that last open spot
Good.
down there. So, yeah, they have those.
And John,
They did do one behind the school too.
and that person, John, I'm thinking of, who maintains all those gardens, he's really into those natural habitats and stuff.
landscaper?
I don't know if he's a landscaper.
No, he's not.
He does it as a volunteer, but he would probably have some nice insights and stuff too about what the kids are enjoying over there at the school on their own garden.
That would be great, and we also look pretty closely at any materials that we propose in the construction. If they be, if we can locally source things, if there's, I mean, we would try to see, I don't think in this case the concrete is gonna do us much good, but we have, reused concrete on site, reused any materials we can get if there's construction going on anywhere in town where all of a sudden somebody, we have rock for excavation, we look for things from local quarries. So that's kind of part of our process, and even though we're not, at this stage, we're not kind of down to that level of detail, that's the kinds of things we would be suggesting in general, and if there was an image of something, we'd kind of point that out, that we can, we can reuse this or source things locally. And we use probably about 80%, as a matter of course, native plants, unless someone says we absolutely want to have it 100%. But we have so many pests and diseases right now, we're sort of, we sometimes need to sneak some non-native but non-invasive things into our plant.
Diversity.
Jane, I know we talked and sent an email on, are your questions answered or your ideas
Yeah,
brought
I
up?
think
You're good?
it's more, once the plan is put together, the things that we can do to entice people to come and to have a nice experience for kids.
Yeah, but you had some ideas about what should be in the park, with all that kind of stuff. You're good with these ideas?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
'cause I did bring some from.
I think anything that I talked about would be possible, according to what we spoke about today.
I know somebody mentioned senior citizens too. So one thing I know as I get older, and I know my dad, there would have to be some seating somewhere, some benches or some
Yeah,
type
oh,
of,
yeah.
It just didn't come up yet, so.
We can use some of that old concrete.
Yes.
How about the old diving board over there? How's that? It's all gone? Well, yeah, it is all gone now. All right, anything else, or anybody else? Nothing? Well, we have everybody's name here, and I appreciate everybody for the input and for coming out, and we'll see how this evolves and comes about, and we'll certainly keep you up to date on where we are. You'll hear it probably at council meetings or other events. You'll probably hear some updates or whatnot, but we'll try to keep everybody up to date the best that we can, so.
Where can we get the updates?
You put the email on here, we'll be able to email you some updates. Okay? We'll probably put something in Plains Talk or email alerts as well. Like I said, I'll probably bring some up at the council meetings as they come up. It'll be out there.
Thank you so much for coming, and as I said, come up here and feel free to